Welcome to Cracking Cooperstown, where we talk all things Baseball Hall of Fame and Hall of Fame collecting. Join us as we discuss Hall of Fame voting, autographs, cards, baseballs, resume, and trajectory. Debate and discussion as we look to crack the code to Cooperstown. Now here's your hosts, Jake Brewer, Dom Manna.
Welcome back to Legends Never Die, where neither will you if you know Jesus, along with my friend Dom at Staven Sports Cards, still my friend in the year 2026. We're off to a hot start here, Dom. How are you?
I'm doing great, Jake. Holidays are one of my favorite times of the year, but as Hall of Fame fans, this is also a really fun time. We talk about it being the most wonderful time of the year with the balloting and the discussion and these players that have been retired for 5, 10, 15 years in some cases are still getting talked about and honored and discussed like we do all the time. Like it's a never-ending conversation when it comes to baseball immortality. So really excited to get into today's conversation for the 2026 BBWAA ballot.
And Christmas hasn't ended here at Cracking Cooperstown because we already know that we're going to have at least one Hall of Famer. We've had the results of the contemporary era ballot, and we do want to take a moment and congratulate Jeff Kent. Dom and I both agree that he was overlooked by the writers' ballot. And while at the time we may not have thought that he was going to get in, Dom and I both recognize and appreciate and will celebrate Jeff Kent this coming summer with his induction to Cooperstown. Our recent guest, Bill, the Hall of Fame collector, correctly predicted this, that he would be getting in on this contemporary era ballot. He, after all, has the most home runs at second base, just under 400 of those with 377. Career 2,461 hits, 1,320 runs, over 1,500 RBIs with 1,525. And in his trophy case, he did have those 4 Silver Sluggers, the MVP, and the 5 All-Star appearances. So kudos to Jeff Kent. I look forward to adding his rookie card and a bobblehead, autographed baseball, and an autograph when those prices die down in a little bit, as he's not a big signer. But in the future, adding those things to a part of my collection. And one more shout out in regards to Jeff Kent. Our friend Frank over at the Sports Cards CPA, formerly known as Baseball Hall of Fame Autographs. I know, at least in our circles, he broke the news that Jeff Kent would be a TriStar exclusive, and he is a exclusive TriStar signer for shows. So expect to see him, doing the circuit, especially probably at the National this year, Cooperstown, and likely the Houston and Texas area shows.
No, that's very cool. Jeff Kent, one of the greatest offensive second basemen in the history of the game, not just by the counting stats either. Highest OPS by a second baseman, minimum 5,000 plate appearances. Roger Hornsby, Jackie Robinson, Charlie Gehringer, and Jeff Kent. And we talk about this a lot with our future Hall of Fame episode that we drop every year here on the podcast. But the 20s is what gets the player on pace. But a lot of times your 30s and how you age is what makes you a Hall of Famer, outside of like the obvious top of the line peak guys that win MVPs on MVPs and have crazy seasons. And Jeff Kent, from age 29 on, the only infielders that had more wins above replacement than Jeff Kent's 45, were Joe Morgan, Ozzie Smith, and Cal Ripken Jr. The only infielders in the history of Major League Baseball to have more B-WAR accumulated from age 29 on. So he really wasn't an everyday player early on with the Mets. And once he got an everyday role out in San Francisco, hitting in the same lineup as Barry Bonds, he really came into his own. He won an MVP. He won those Silver Sluggers, and he made himself a guy that's over the Hall of Fame line in my position. I own his 1992 Fleer update rookie card. I did not bring it with me. I only have the BBWAA guys today. But I looked to see if I could snag a cheap autograph when the news broke, and I didn't realize, but he didn't sign in a lot of product back in the day. So there's very few pack pulled Jeff Kent options. There's a lot of IP ones that were, being listed for quite a bit of money, and I'm sure much higher now. This is not the time to buy Jeff Kent autographs, but if he's going to be on the show circuit with TriStar, whatever that ridiculous price may be, the good thing for us is over time, him signing more will bring the overall market down. So I will get a Jeff Kent autograph eventually in the collection, but don't have one yet to share.
And one additional aside there, if you're curious or you're not aware, even with a Jeff Kent being exclusive with TriStar for public signings, private signings, all those kind of things, he can still sign with like a Topps through Fanatics to sign pack pulled autographs. It's exclusive to his in-person and private signings. So like an autographed baseball, we're getting a card signed that way that hasn't been signed through the company like Topps Fanatics. That's where that exclusivity comes in. Because like, for example, a Craig Biggio, a Jeff Bagwell, they are TriStar exclusives. The Crime Dog, Fred McGriff, he is a TriStar exclusive. And if he couldn't be in Topps products, it would be a Crime Dog. But moving on.
You find a way to work that into every single episode. The Jeff Kent election was a little bit surprising just because of how deep this ballot was in terms of candidates. I think you can make a real argument for 7 of the 8 names that were on that contemporary era ballot. But this is how the results shook out. So you needed to get 12 votes to get elected out of the 16 committee members. Jeff Kent got 14. He was near unanimous. Carlos Delgado, Jake's boy, got 9 votes. Don Mattingly and Dale Murphy, who a lot of people thought were the favorites to get in on this committee, got 6 apiece. And Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, Gary Sheffield, and Fernando Mania fell below the 5-vote threshold, which, as we talked about on last week's episode, the new rule for the Baseball Hall of Fame is on these era committees, if you get fewer than 5 votes, you're not eligible the next time this ballot comes around. So in 2028, when the contemporary era is voted on again, those 4 names will not be in the pool of players that can make up that 8-player ballot. And the secondary stipulation is if they appear on a future ballot 6+ years down the road and they fall short of 5 votes a second time, they essentially can get shelved for as long as the Baseball Hall of Fame deems fit. They don't have to be considered again if they fall short twice. Now, this is something that Bill was very confident in. Kudos to him for being correct. This is something that Jake seemed relatively confident in terms of the results. So before I go, as someone who is playing the opposite side of the spectrum here, what really jumped out to you about these results and kind of the overall impact of them going forward with these era committees?
Yeah, so I'll touch on 2 main things here. One, that if you didn't catch our last episode, I personally believe it's one of the best episodes we've ever done. It just has a really in-depth perspective of the dynamics around how these era committees are formed and how the different results can come about based on who's on the committee. Because we talked about that a lot in our last episode, and we didn't know at the time who would be on it. And we did a lot of speculation of the board of directors controls who goes on this committee. And, in a somewhat subtle way, they can manipulate what they want to happen. They can stack the ballot one way or another. They can give it a fair chance. It's really up to them on ultimately who makes this call. That's not them directly. And I speculated that I think that the Hall made all of these rules and played the long game of like, over this next decade, this is how we're going to get these steroid guys or steroid accusation guys out of our hair. And we're going to get them off the board. Now, that's not necessarily what I wanted, but it's what I speculated that would happen. And this first go round, that seems to be the case, or at least the result that came about. Like Dom just said, the next chance that, a Bonds, a Clemens, a Sheffield, and a Valenzuela, granted not the same case, but the next chance they have to be on this committee, if the rules don't change, is 2031. Okay. So I'll let Dom go a little further on that in a minute. The one other thing that I want to highlight is I'm thrilled about my boy Carlos Delgado. Longtime proponent of I think he should be a Hall of Famer. Whichever angle you want to take at it. He was a clean slugger. His numbers are already there, in my opinion. He's somebody that I think is above the rest of the era that's just below him for Hall of Fame candidacy. And I thought he would get some support. I didn't think he would actually get in, but he got closer than I thought. And I think that this bodes well for him next go round to be, this much even above like a Mattingly and a Murphy, who a lot of people thought had a strong chance, and they'll remain on the ballot potentially for the 2028 go round. But I think with Delgado's strong showing here, I think he's very likely to be on it in 2028, but also pinning the names they surround him with, because the board of directors also chooses the names that goes on this list. Also, depending on who's surrounding him, he could be the candidate on that ballot, which could earn him Hall of Fame election in 2028. So, Dom, if you want to comment on any of those things and then segue to what I know you're chomping at the bit for, I'll give you the floor here.
I also believe Carlos Delgado belongs in the Hall of Fame. He is not one of my Hall of Fame hills to die on, but I think he is above the Hall of Fame line. A really overlooked slugger that fell off the ballot too soon with the writers. I think he's the only guy who is guaranteed to be on the 2028 contemporary era ballot, based on his showing and the fact that half the ballot fell off completely, like they're not eligible. Mm-hmm. So I think Delgado will be on it. Murphy and Mattingly will most likely be on it, but they could choose to give some other people a chance based on them only getting 6. Delgado will be on the 2028 ballot. Now, will he be the most likely candidate? TBD on who else is on there.
Yeah.
But it definitely was a strong showing, and it was a surprising vote outcome. As I talked about with Jeff Kent, from age 29 on, when he went to San Francisco, that's when he became a Hall of Famer. And he obviously had to hit those home runs himself. He hit the baseball. He accumulated that WAR individually, and not to take away from his achievements. But you can do the math here. There were 16 members. They each had 3 votes maximum. And the votes that we see, there's 35 of them. So 35 of them, 48 votes. There's 13 votes that are unaccounted for. Bonds, Clemens, Sheffield, and Valenzuela combined received less votes from this committee than Jeff Kent did. I'm not saying Jeff Kent, we gave him his flowers. He's a deserving Hall of Famer, but that should speak volumes to us Hall of Fame fans. Mm-hmm. And we're both Christians. We both believe in forgiveness. We both believe in second chances. I believe that this is essentially turning into a not so quiet protest from all of baseball. And it starts with Hall of Famer Bud Selig, who knew that stuff was going on in the game, but it was for his benefit. It was for ad revenue benefit. It was for profiting. And he allowed it to happen for a long time without having any kind of guardrails or punishments in store for the players. And Bud Selig, by the time he had the personal pressure and the Mitchell Report investigation happened and steroid suspension started in 2005, the testing and suspension, Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens and Gary Sheffield, they were towards the end of their careers. And they didn't serve suspensions at the end. for steroids. So they weren't using steroids the last couple of years of their career. Doesn't mean they didn't use steroids during their career. But to me, that's always been the cutoff, is if you're going to treat it like the Wild West until 2005, then you can't basically play judge, and in this case, executioner, because I believe they are basically condemning these steroid guys to death. They are essentially saying Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, Gary Sheffield, Rafael Palmeiro, Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa, all the way to the Jose Canseco's of the world. You are not going to see your day in the sun in Cooperstown. You are not going to live knowing that you're a Hall of Famer. We are not going to give you the honor. And to me, just from the Bud Selig election alone is blasphemous. But the fact that players in this same era of Jeff Kent, who I know has spoken out as being anti-steroid, Carlos Delgado, who doesn't have a big steroid cloud above him, but played in a hot spot in Toronto for many years.
Mm-hmm.
Some guys are getting the pass from the same era, and some guys are getting condemned. And when people say you either got to put all of them in or none of them in, there's some guys that are in the Hall of Fame right now, whether they have the suspicion or not, that used something that is against the current day rules during their playing days. That is without a doubt. It doesn't mean they don't belong in the Hall of Fame. You still have to hit the baseball. You still have to hit your spot with your pitches. You still have to succeed at the highest level, which these guys did. There's no question about it. And to me, the Hall of Fame loses some legitimacy when it doesn't suspend these guys when they're active. It doesn't stop them from being on the Baseball Writers Association ballot for 10 years. They're eligible candidates. This is not a Pete Rose situation where they were not eligible to be voted on.
Right.
Bud Selig passes the baton to the baseball writers. The baseball writers can't come to a consensus. They pass the baton to the Hall of Fame and these era committees, and the era committees are basically saying no. And
and indirectly, it's the board of directors of the Hall that are saying no, because they're the ones that choose who goes on these committees, right? Because there are some voices in the room, we know, supporting some of these guys. There are people that have been on these era committees that are very publicly well known to support Bonds and Clemens, especially, that were in this room, right? So we know that it's not completely on this the committee, but the board of directors who controls the committee.
Yeah, it's a systematic issue. But
yeah, it
started with Major League Baseball, and now the onus is on the Hall of Fame. Like I said, this is not a Pete Rose situation where they were ineligible. They were eligible candidates for the Baseball Writers Association. They've been eligible candidates here. But when you see results like this, the committee goes one by one through these names, and they discuss each name. Everybody on that 16-person committee gets a chance to say something about each candidate.
Right.
For these to be the results with the statistics that they have, the group that was assembled essentially is pretending like they didn't play baseball. Like Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, and Gary Sheffield weren't eligible candidates on this ballot. Like, it was really only a 4-person ballot. And to me, that they're not doing their job. And it's really disheartening as a fan of the Hall of Fame. I think that the Hall of Fame has moved mountains and really tried the last couple of years to promote getting candidates in while they're living. Overlooked candidates. And you can say Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens aren't overlooked candidates because of how good they are. But the backlog that Major League Baseball started, the Baseball Writers Association continued, and now these era committees, this is their second time on era committees, have continued the backlog, is making it harder for everybody to get into the Hall of Fame from this contemporary era ballot. And I think that is just terrible because, like I said, you're playing with people's lives. Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens won't be eligible for consideration from this committee until 2031. Barry Bonds will be 67 years old. Roger Clemens will be 69 years old. Like you're starting to play with people's lives and saying that they're not going to get their day in the sun because we want to promote guys that have a little bit cleaner of a story than you.
Well, and not to devalue that, because I'm not necessarily disagreeing with any of that. But on the flip side, it's a double-edged sword. There is the positive in terms of the backlog, meaning that, instead of, if they're not going to get in, if the board of directors is going to continue to, stack who's on the committee to be anti-Bonds, Clemens, Sheffield, the list goes on, I would rather the names be cleared and like off the list so that a Lofton, a Schilling, a Delgado, throwing you a bone, Steve Finley can be on this era committee, right? As opposed to, you could put Bonds, Clemens, Sheffield, McGuire, Sosa, Palmeiro, and like that's the list, and just time after time, no. So while it's a double-edged sword, I do think that while it shouldn't supersede the fact that this may not be right, that is a little bit of a silver lining, that we are going to get to see some other names get a chance to get in, as opposed to just no over and over again.
I want as many deserving candidates to get their day in the sun and to have their Hall of Fame speech on record on the Cooperstown lawn, surrounded by fellow Hall of Famers. I want as many of them as possible to do that. Curt Schilling's a bad example because the writers essentially said, we don't want to give you that honor of doing it while you're alive. We're scared what you're going to say. And when he was on this contemporary era committee,
he said, don't vote for me. Yeah.
They didn't vote for him. He didn't want to be voted for. He has the jerkitis aspect. So Curt Schilling might get the same kind of treatment where they don't put him in until he's passed away because people don't want to give him that honor and give him that platform.
But at the same time, same thing. If we cleared his name twice, like it's a no, then we can move on to whoever, pick your guy.
But that's the thing. These era committees, their primary objective has been to right the wrongs of the baseball writers. And it's for those guys that you're talking about, the like one and done, the more unsung, the not obvious Hall of Fame guys, the guys that are somewhere around the borderline metric, depending on where your Hall of Fame metrics fall. Guys like Carlos Delgado and Steve Finley, those are supposed to be era committee candidates. But the writers did not do their job. Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, Gary Sheffield, these are guys that are supposed to get in their first or second time on the writers' ballot and not be clogging this up. So you're trying to find the positive in this, and I do appreciate that. But to me, like, I will honor a Kenny Lofton. I'll go to Cooperstown for Steve Finley. But those guys are not supposed to be getting in years before guys with the resumes of Bonds and Clemens are. It's backwards. It's vindictive. It's not objective anymore. And I talked about it with you before we recorded about how the character clause has, I think, been very much misused. It's been a weapon. It's been the pen is mightier than the sword. It's been giving, I think, a little bit too much of a power trip to the people that are deciding on these things, because the actual baseball resume a lot of times is being looked at secondary or not at all. And it's the National Baseball Hall of Fame. And to have guys like Bonds and Clemens blackballed from it when they didn't break a written rule in Major League Baseball, they helped save the sport. They're two of the most accomplished players ever. And you're basically saying, no, we're not giving you the honor while you are living. To me is is a huge stain on the Hall of Fame. And I tried to be the glass half full person on our episode with Bill, saying that they want these discussions to end. That's why they made Pete Rose eligible. That's why Bonds and Clemens are on this ballot, is they want to stop talking about that. They want that negative attention to not be around the Hall of Fame anymore. So they want to get those guys in, so then the era committee's focus can just be about the Kenny Loftons and the Steve Finleys and those kind of candidates that were overlooked, because that's the way that this model's always supposed to be. But baseball messed it up. The baseball writers messed it up. And now the era committee is, like I said, playing judge, jury, executioner. And I just think it's morally wrong. And I just can't agree with it. It makes me look at the Hall of Fame a slightly different way, knowing all the factors in play.
And all of those things put together basically come to the summation that this specific contemporary era ballot has major ramifications for the Hall of Fame, for the next era, for the other era committees, and the writer's ballot itself. And that's kind of the second half of what we want to talk about today, because one of these things plays into another. And it is also the season for the BBWAA writer's ballot. Now, Dom and I were chatting a little bit before we went live, talking about how, historically speaking, in our lives, where, we've played Baseball Writers of America ballot and filled out our own, this may be the weakest ballot of our lifetime. Now, we're still going to walk through it, at least so far. We're still going to walk through it, talk about some different candidates, talk about some different trends. And to do so, if you're unaware, Ryan Thibodeau every year does a Baseball Hall of Fame tracker. It is the greatest spreadsheet known to man for a Baseball Hall of Fame fan. Dom's going to pull it up here in a moment, so that for those of you watching along here with us on YouTube, you can see this, and we're going to walk through player by player. Some will spend a little more time. Some we will gloss over quickly, but we do want to do that. Now, I am going to give first player rights here to Dom, because I think he's a little more positive on this first player, and he needs that after this rant he had to just share with all of you guys regarding the contemporary era. So, Dom, take it away for this first player on this year's BBWA ballot.
Yeah, Jake, I can't do anything about the results from there, but I can honor and celebrate these candidates on this ballot. And Ryan Thibodeau and his team, he has a team of about 6 people who aggregate all the Hall of Fame votes, and they post the ballots onto Blue Sky. They were formerly on Twitter. They left that platform. So you can go follow them over there, and you will see pictures of all the ballots with the net up and net down for each player added in. So that's really cool. This is kind of the aggregation of it. There's 107 public ballots as of this recording, which is about 26.4% of the 428 expected, meaning that you need to be on 321 ballots or so to get that 75% magic number threshold for election. So that is really, really interesting. It seems that the votes so far are agreeing with us that it is a weaker ballot, because the votes per ballot so far is 6.54. So most ballots are voting between 6 and 7 players. 6, 7. They're doing that. And usually the early birds are the people that vote for 10 or 9 guys. Usually that average is more in the 8 range than the 6 range. So Bobby Abreu is someone who's done well so far. 41% of the votes through 100 votes, 47 votes publicly. He last year on the ballot got 19.5% of the vote. So while I am a yes on Bobby Abreu, I also can acknowledge that he's way too far away to get elected this year, and him being in this seventh year on the ballot, very unlikely that he's going to be able to get the 75%, even with the weakness of the ballot around him. But Bobby Abreu, to me, is kind of what I was talking about earlier with what the era committees are supposed to be about. They're supposed to be about players who didn't necessarily pass the Hall of Fame eye test or weren't the biggest superstars in the game, but truly accomplished a great amount of things in their playing career. Now, Bobby Abreu has 60.2 WAR, which to me is a really respectable number, whether you look at that as a 6 WAR player, which is a really good player for 10 years, or a 3 WAR player for two decades. Bobby Abreu accomplished that level of WAR. He ended up with 2,470 hits, only 30 shy of Jake's magic 2,500 number, but still well above the rule of 2,000. 288 career home runs, just short of my round number of 300, a 291 career hitter. He scored 4,453 runs, only 47 short of 1,500. He ended up hitting 574 doubles, which puts him surprisingly high in terms of doubles. 59 triples, 1,363 RBI, so well above 1,000. He stole 400 bases on the dot and was only caught 128 times, so a pretty efficient base stealer. His walks to strikeouts is pretty close, 1476 walks to 1840 strikeouts, and his career slash line 291, 395, 475 with a 128 OPS plus. Now, when you think of Bobby Abreu, you think of a pretty good corner outfielder probably. But when you look at those numbers, he was able to do that over an 18-year career. So he was someone that was better than 25, 30% of the league throughout his entire career as a corner outfielder with power, with speed, with a pretty good throwing arm. He won a home run derby championship, a gold glove, was only a 2-time All-Star. But Bobby Abreu, to me, is a future Hall of Famer. And while I'm not going to be running out to get all of his stuff, the autographed rookie card and stuff right now, because I think I have a longer leash on the window, I do think an era committee is going to look at his career a lot more fondly and respect it a lot more than most of these writers are doing. So I'm a yes on Bobby Abreu, and I think when most people hear the name or picture the player, they don't realize how great his career really was.
I'm a no on Bobby. He meets 0 of my metrics. However, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the ballot math here regarding Abreu. So Dom alluded to and mentioned that he finished at 19.5% last year. He's currently at 41.6% of known ballots. Now, if that trend held true, because that's all that we can multiply out here in terms of math, once the final results were out last year, the actual minus the pre-results, meaning what was the net gain or drop in his overall percentage once all ballots were known and the private was added in there, was a drop of 4%. Okay. So that means that if he maintained at 41.6 all the way through the public, may or may not happen, a lot of variables there, a lot of voters. But if it did, and he dropped 4%, that means he would jump up to 37. That would be almost double his percentage of last year. Now, he is in his 7th year of eligibility on the writer's ballot, meaning he would have 3 more. He's a net plus minus so far amongst returning voters and the public known ones at a plus 10. He has lost no votes from returning voters. And I think that signals a trend of, I think that he could grow. However, if I had to guess, even with a potential final year push, I think Abreu is going to end up being a miss on the writer's ballot and maybe fall somewhere in that 60-ish% range when it's all said and done, if he continues to see this trend bumping up over his last couple years. In all likelihood, it's going to fall somewhere between 40 and 60. That's a big range, but somewhere between 40 and 60. The closer he gets to that 60, I think gives him a better chance when he winds up on a contemporary era ballot. And with what we've talked about on other podcasts, with the potential change of what makes a Hall of Fame hitter, if that happens within the culture and the results of the BBWA over the next decade, that I think, 10-ish years down the road, Abreu's an era committee realistic candidate. I just think that's what we're looking at the long road. I just don't think he's going to have enough time here. He's so far along in the process in his 7th year now that as that potential trend starts to happen, he's going to be ahead of the curve on that in terms of his time here with the Riders.
Yeah, I'm playing the long game. I would love for him to eclipse 50% before he falls off. I think that's a reasonable goal that he might be able to get to. But we shall see. Carlos Beltran is, I think, the consensus. Everyone's just like, yeah, he's going to get in, because last year he got 70.3% of the vote. Other than Curt Schilling, no player to get 70% or more of the vote the year prior has missed the next year. And with this ballot being on the weaker side, the people that voted for Beltran have no reason to take him off. And the people who are looking for people to add, he's one of the strongest arguments you can make on this whole ballot. So before you get into, because I know you have your whole Carlos Beltran diatribe, he had the key rookie card for Carlos Beltran is an error that we share, because I gifted this to you. It's the 95 tops traded Carlos Beltran, but that is not Carlos Beltran. That is Juan LeBron. And the Juan LeBron pictures a young Carlos Beltran. So that's just a fun hobby thing about Carlos Beltran. But Carlos Beltran, to me, is a no-brainer Hall of Famer that if he didn't get dinged with the Astros scandal his last year in Major League Baseball, would have been, if not a first ballot Hall of Famer, a pretty easy second ballot Hall of Famer. He'd be in already. So year 4, Carlos Beltran. Jake, take us home with that.
Here's my Carlos Beltran sweet spot autograph while he's a member of the Astros. He's not a tough autograph. He does have some out there. Not a ton. He's not everywhere. He's not $10. But if you don't have a Beltran, get him before he's about to be elected, because Beltran has over 2,500 hits, 2,725, over 400 home runs, 435, over 1,500 runs and RBIs, 1,582 and 1,587 respectively. He crosses that 300 stolen base threshold that Dom loves at 312. He's got 3 Gold Gloves, 2 Silver Sluggers, and was a 9-time All-Star. He meets 4 of my secondary qualifiers. And Beltran last year, like Dom mentioned, was so close. He missed by a grand total of 19 votes. Now, the number of voters that actually submit their ballot will vary. Some are first-time eligible voters. Some may be on their last eligible year as being a voter. So that number shifts a little bit. So it's not an exact science to say, yes, 19 gained votes gets him in. But somewhere in that range, relatively speaking, will. And he's so far a +7 in net plus minus. He has gained 8 and surprisingly lost 1, which is interesting in his 4th-year ballot on a weak ballot. Not sure who is voting for 10 other people and not Beltran on this ballot, but I digress.
Find that one.
We're going to have to find who his lost vote was. I didn't look that up, but you can do that on this tracker. If things held true, kind of like what I was talking about with Abreu, Beltran lost 10% last year from the private to the ultimate results once public was added in. If that was the case as of right now, if all trends held true, he would get into the Hall of Fame with roughly 77.6%. And I believe that Dom and I are in agreement that this is the year for Beltran, that we both believe that he will get in. So I will move us along to our first year candidate on the ballot, and that is Ryan Braun, who does have post 2005 steroid issues with the "it wasn't my test, it was my test, I failed the test, I was suspended," all of those things
He
surrounding.
tried to get the person who delivered his test fired.
Yeah.
He vehemently denied it. Ryan Braun, up until that scandal, was a personal favorite of mine. I really enjoyed watching him play. I was very disheartened because it was at the point where steroids were taboo. I was very disheartened with that whole situation.
Mm-hmm.
But out of the first year eligible hitters, he's probably got the best case. 47.2 career WAR, 1,963 hits, 352 career home runs, well above my number, 296 career hitter, 1,080 runs scored, 408 doubles, 1,154 RBIs, stole 216 bases, had a 134 OPS plus in 14 years, 296, 358, and a 532 career slugging percentage. Ryan Braun was a hell of a player. But I don't vote for condemned steroid users. If you did it when it was illegal, you got caught, especially in the nature that he got caught, I can't vote for you. So Ryan Braun, Rookie of the Year, MVP, 6-time All-Star, really good player. But I don't see him getting the 5% necessary.
Well, that was my ballot math question. He's got 4 votes so far among the 107. It's estimated that he'll need a total of 22 votes to get 5% and stay on, 18 more. You think he doesn't get it? And I am in agreement with you. I think he falls off the ballot after his one appearance.
If Ryan Braun was clean, he'd be a very sneaky guy on this wide open ballot. But I think the steroids and falling short of the Rule 2000, as I've talked about on this program before, I think that combination is pretty hard to overcome. Jake, you haven't been able to quit the Mark Buerhle. Tell people why this guy deserves Hall of Fame consideration.
Mark Buerhle, as I show my rookie card and autograph of Mark Buerhle on screen. He's actually a really tough autograph baseball, believe it or not. I picked mine up at the National in Atlantic City alongside Don, Field of Dreams. So shout out to him. But this is why Mark Buerhle should be a Hall of Fame pitcher. And it's really simple, Dom. My rule of post-2000 wins. Okay, Mark Buerhle started in 2000, and I think that if you cleared 200 wins in that era, that is the new benchmark with the changing landscape of guys not even making it 5 innings or definitely not making it to quality starts. As avid fantasy baseball players ourselves, so many times guys are pulled at 5 2/3, and it is the worst feeling when you get points for that quality start in 6 innings. But Mark Buerhle earned 214 wins. He also had 4 Gold Gloves, 5 All-Star appearances. He wasn't a huge strikeout guy. He had 1,870. But Mark Buerhle, on the Buerhle meter, which was an ESPN staple, meets the Hall of Fame qualifications for me. And in terms of ballot math, before you try and pick my boy Mark Buerhle apart, in terms of ballot math here, he does have 6 gained votes so far in this cycle. He finished with 11.4%. Last year. He's currently at 23% of the known ballots. He dropped 2% after the private results. So really what I want to see for Mark Buerhle, because while I am his champion, and I will continue to be so as he finishes out his time on the ballot over the next few years, in all reality, as I think that there is going to be a new definition of what makes a Hall of Fame pitcher, similar to what Dom believes with Hall of Fame hitters over the next decade-ish, I want to see Buerhle get enough support that he becomes a real contemporary era committee candidate. And I think that this year, if he bumps up to somewhere around 15 to 20%, That's continued good progress. I need to see him get into that like 40 range by the time he's done to, I think, be a realistic candidate on the era committee ballot.
The one thing that I've always been willing to give Mark Buerhle is that his perfect game is one of the most exciting games of this century to watch. The defensive heroics and the key offensive plays and everything. It was a really fun game to watch. He was steady. Don't get me wrong. Like that, there is value in having a Mark Buerhle on your team, but he just falls so far below what I view as a Hall of Fame pitcher. Doesn't have the hardware. The strikeouts for how many innings he pitched is kind of laughable. And yeah, he's someone that I don't see it happening. I think that there's guys with higher peaks, like I would vote for Johan Santana.
I would also vote for Johan Santana
over Mark Buerhle 10 times out of 10. So that there's guys that have like the peak advantage on him. There's guys that have some more bulk than him that are on this ballot. I just don't see a lane for Buerhle to get into the Hall of Fame. He's clearly got enough of a support where he's not in danger of falling off anymore, which is good for you. But I just don't see the ability to really climb too much higher. He's not someone I think ever will be getting 50+% of the vote. But Mark Buerhle, good pitcher. And like I said, a really, really fun, perfect game. The next four guys are first-year candidates. We talked about how Ryan Braun is probably the best hitter of the bunch. Shin-Soo Choo, very fun player, right fielder. And he ended up finishing his career with 218 home runs, 34.7 career WAR, a 122 OPS plus. So he was 22% better than league average during his career. And he led the league in hit by pitches in 2013 for the Cincinnati Reds. Good career. We've talked about this. It is an honor to get put on the ballot. You had to play at least 10 years in Major League Baseball to be eligible and be retired for 5+ years. So Shin-Soo Choo was a fun player, a nice, complimentary player. During me growing up, I watched all of his career, enjoyed watching him play, never really thought Hall of Famer, and the statistics didn't end up going out that way. Next one, Edwin Encarnacion. He was someone that for a while people were saying might be a 500 home run guy. He fell short, 434 career home runs. He falls short of the rule of 2000, 1832, 35.3 career WAR. He's a 3-time All-Star. He led the American League in RBIs in 2016, which was his second highest MVP finish at MVP 12. Gio Gonzalez, most notably part of the 2019 Washington Nationals World Series team, 28.3 career WAR, 131 wins to 101 losses. He led the league in wins in 2012, with the Nationals, led the league in walks in 2011 and 2017, and led the league in FIP in 2012, which was his best season, where the lead leaguing wins and lead leaguing FIP got him a third-place Cy Young finish. He was a 2-time All-Star. Gio Gonzalez, good pitcher. And then there's Cole Hamels, which I'm going to pass the baton to you because the future of the Hall of Fame pitcher is definitely in question. And if you're going to make an argument for any of these first-year pitchers to be a Hall of Famer with the new metrics, it's Cole Hamels.
And I am a yes on Cole Hamels. He is that post-2000 start pitcher. My secondary qualifier there is 150-plus wins. He has 163 career wins, so he crosses that. And my secondary qualifier for strikeouts is 2,500. He had 2,560. He was also a 4-time All-Star. He's also got postseason clout and heroics on his resume for those that makes a difference to kind of put a cherry on top on a Hall of Fame candidacy. resume. I'm a yes on Cole Hamels, and out the gate here for the ballot of the known ballot, he's received 31.9% where we're at. And if we take a moment to flash back to King Felix's results from last year, I'm going to flip it if you're watching with us on YouTube. I'm going to flip it to the 2025 ballot and take a look at King Felix. Now, we know that he wound up at 20.6% last year, all said and done, but his public ballot results, so before the private was known, was 23.5%. And then, he dropped down to that 20.6. So when we take a look at a Cole Hamels, it's still early, a lot of variables, a lot of public ballots we still don't know, but that is a possibility of being 10-ish percent above where King Felix was in the public known ballots. And we're seeing a second year jump for King Felix, as we know that I'm skipping ahead to him a little bit, as we know that often there are a contingent of these voters that will not vote for people based on it's a first ballot Hall of Famer, whether that's a real honor or not, warranted or not, it does exist still. So if Cole Hamels stays in this 30-ish percent range and then sees a jump next year, as a second year candidate, we're already approaching that 50% marker that could indicate a future Hall of Fame pitcher. I'm a little surprised with the early results of Cole Hamels. I didn't think it would be quite this strong. What do you think, Dom? Are you as surprised as I am?
I'm actually not surprised at all.
Really?
Fool me once, shame on you. But you're not going to fool me again. There's something in the water in Philadelphia that if you have a respectable WAR total, you have a peak, you hit some numbers. You don't have to hit all the numbers. You hit some numbers. You can do well on the writer's ballot. I think this is Chase Utley 2.0. Yes, I'm personally a no on Cole Hamels. I'm actually more okay with Cole Hamels than a Mark Buerhle. So he kind of falls into this, no man's land area where there's somewhat of a debate for who is the best pitcher right now on the writer's ballot. And it's a little bit more open. Cole Hamels was clearly good enough to get 5%. I don't think that was ever in doubt. But to see him doing this well, it does not surprise me at all because Chase Utley debuted at a surprisingly high total. And I think that Cole Hamels is going to be somewhere between 20, like the 20 that King Felix got. And like you said, like maybe even 30 on this much more open ballot than Chase Utley debuted on a few years ago. So Cole Hamels, if he gets honored as a Hall of Famer someday, I can live with it. He was, a top 12 to 20 pitcher of his era. Not quite the elite of the elite, but a very good pitcher that I was prospecting as a future Hall of Famer, thinking that he'd get to 3,000 Ks and ended up retiring early. So
something interesting about the comparison from Buerhle to Hamels. Okay. It's basically the two main statistics. It's basically one versus the other. Buerhle has 51 more wins than a Hamels, but Hamels has like 700 more strikeouts, 600 and something more strikeouts than a Buerhle. And then you look at
less innings.
Yes, in less innings. They have the same amount of all-star appearances. Okay. Now their ERA, Hamels is a little better in the 340s. Buerhle's in the 380s. But a stat that often the modern voter points to is WAR. Their WAR is exactly the same at 59.
Rare.
59 flat, which I think is an interesting dynamic there where, different things, because Buerhle also had some postseason heroics. He was around for that White Sox World Series championship and played a part in that. Hamels has his story in Philly. Apparently, the equation comes out Philly greater than Chicago. Like, I don't know what the deal is, like you said, with the water in Philly,
I'm starting to be
those must be
convinced
very
that
memorable.
yeah, I'm starting to be convinced that Philadelphia, out of the 428 ballots, Philadelphia has like 150 of the writers that are part of the BBWAA. Like it's got to be like there's got to be some sort of like population statistic or something going on there, because like it doesn't make sense to me. But with the state of the ballot, and you talked about the future of the Hall of Fame pitcher, I think exactly what you said, the difference between Buerhle and Hamels, is exactly what's being looked at. Is wins do not tell how great or dominant a pitcher was anymore. It's about their ability to miss bats. It's about their ability to limit runs. It's about their ability to accumulate wins above replacement. And Cole Hamels, significantly less innings than Mark Buerhle, hits 2,500 strikeouts, which is nothing to sniff at. I mean, it's a real number. And you know, Cole Hamels to me is not a Hall of Fame pitcher, but he's closer than Buerhle. And I think that there's a real argument for people that want to use all 10 votes that he should be one of the 10 votes.
Which transitions us to King Felix, who has 169 career wins, 6 more than Hamels, as Dom is sharing a King Felix card on screen, along with his patch autograph. Ooh, 3 colors. That's beautiful. I'll share mine in a moment. But King Felix, right in the same range of wins as Hamels, right? Mm-hmm. Right in the same range in terms of ERA. Cole Hamels is 343 and King Felix is 342. And then strikeout comparison, 2,524 for King Felix, 2,560 for Hamels. Now, I do think a little bit of the difference here is their decorated trophy case comparison, because while Hamels was a 4-time All-Star, King Felix was a 6-time All-Star. Cole Hamels, no Cy Youngs, 1 for King Felix. You could argue that he should have had more. He also had 2 pitching titles, 2 ERA titles. And I am very pro King Felix. His results last year were 20.6% on the final ballot. He dropped that 2.9% after the private was known. He's currently trending at 58.4% of the known ballots in his second year of candidacy. He has gained 25 votes and shockingly lost 1, so he's a net plus 24. It looks like King Felix is primed for a significant jump and maybe setting the groundwork and the blueprint for his tag-along 1 year behind him of Cole Hamels. King Felix could pave the way for Hamels to get in right after him in the coming changing of the guard of the Hall of Fame pitcher. Dom, I know that you're not pro Felix if you had a ballot, but what do you make of what we're seeing in the early results here with him?
Well, let me preface this by Felix Hernandez is one of my 5 favorite pitchers I've ever had the pleasure to watch. There's a reason why I have his 2004 tops traded in a true gem BGS 9.5 and that sick patch auto. I loved watching Felix Hernandez pitch. And through age 29, I absolutely thought he was going to be a Hall of Famer. But as we talked about on this program many times, and we mentioned it with Jeff Kent, what you do in your 20s is the foundation. But what you do in your 30s is usually what gets you over the Hall of Fame line. And Felix Hernandez's arm basically fell off in his 30s. Yes, he still accumulated some strikeouts and some wins and some innings, but he was not accumulating WAR. He was not hitting the same ERA numbers. His 30s were rough, and he was done by 35. So Felix Hernandez, to me, would be a option of a peak Hall of Famer for a pitcher like a Johan Santana. And while I would honor both those guys if they got into the Hall of Fame, I'm personally not going to make that call And it's partially Sandy Koufax's fault, because when you think a short peak Hall of Fame pitcher, he's one of the first names that comes to mind. And Felix Hernandez and Johan Santana, I don't think can personally hold a candle to what Sandy Koufax was able to do, not just as an individual performer, but also winning. Felix Hernandez, I know he didn't have great offenses around him. I know his ballpark was not good for hitters, but no playoffs, not a ton of wins. He pitched a ton of innings. I think the strikeouts and the ERA title show his dominance. Like I said, I think that's what the future of the Hall of Fame pitcher is looking for, the ability to limit runs, the ability to miss bats. So if Felix Hernandez gets elected to the Hall of Fame someday, I will celebrate him. Heck, I'll probably even drive up to Cooperstown to celebrate him, but he's not going to be on my Hall of Fame ballot just because it's not the way that I look at Hall of Fame pitchers. It's too far below the metrics that I kind of have in my head of what a Hall of Fame pitcher is. So I can't vote for him, but man, I love the guy.
The player next up on the ballot is one of your personal favorites. So I will let you continue to have the floor here with a player that I also thoroughly enjoyed his time in Major League Baseball. He was fun to watch, man. I loved having him in fantasy, and that's Spider-Man, Torii Hunter.
So I came around on Torii Hunter last year, and I felt like it was too late because he was trending to fall off the damn ballot, right? We're talking about all these guys that don't have 200 wins, that don't have 2,000 hits, that don't have 50 WAR, that are getting significant consideration, right? And in a minute, Jake and I, especially Jake, are going to glaze Andrew Jones as why the heck isn't he in the Hall of Fame? Andrew Jones' number one argument for being a Hall of Famer is that at one of the toughest defensive positions, center field, he won 10 straight Gold Gloves and had 400 career home runs. Torii Hunter has 9 Gold Gloves and 353 career home runs. It's not that far off. That's just the surface level. But when you dive deeper, Andrew Jones does not break the rule of 2,000 hits. Torii Hunter is close to 2,500, 2,452. He has 1,296 runs scored, well over my nice round number of 1,000. He has 1,391 RBI, well above the round number of 300 of 1,000. He has 498 doubles, so just shy of 500 doubles. So he wasn't just, if you say, oh, wow, like he didn't hit as many home runs as Andrew Jones, he had power. He had power to the gaps. He stole 195 bases. His career slash line is 277, which is significantly higher batting average than Andrew Jones. 331 on base, 461 slugging, and a 110 OPS plus despite playing 19 years. And unlike Andrew Jones, was a contributing player in his old age, in his 30s. He also, we talk about the character clause. People love Torii Hunter. He was a great teammate, a great guy, great with the media. He almost got a managerial job this year with the Angels. I think all that matters. I think that there's no way you can check 10 boxes on this ballot and say that those 10 players were better than Torii Hunter. To me, he's over the Hall of Fame line. He's not a slam dunk Hall of Famer by any means, but he's over the line. And we're talking about era committee candidates. Like, if the baseball writers can't get it together with Torii Hunter, he's the kind of guy that an era committee will love. I wouldn't be shocked if he got a unanimous era committee someday, especially if Andrew Jones gets in through the writers and then people make the direct comparison I just did. 10 and 400, 9 and 350. When all the other numbers under the hood, as other than slugging percentage, seem to lean Torii Hunter. So, yeah, I'm a fan of his. I have his 92 Bowman rookie card. I got it after coming around on him last year. I need to get an autograph. really great player, highlight catches in center field. He was a good corner outfielder in his 30s. He aged like a Hall of Famer and hit those numbers that I look for. I'm a yes on Torrey Hunter, even though the writers have a long way to go with him because right now he's below 5% yet again.
I'm a no on Torrey Hunter. However, he says, put me on the contemporary era ballot and see what happens. There's only one thing I want to point out with Torrey Hunter before we move on, because Dom did a great job of illustrating who he is as a player and kind of where he stands in comparison to others. I just want to point out in his 6th year of candidacy, he's not getting in from the writers. And Mark Buerhle, who's also in his 6th year of candidacy to this point, has received double the support of Torrey Hunter. I just want to point that out as my guy versus Dom's guy.
We pointed out during the contemporary era committee that the BBWAA makes mistakes all the time.
I know.
So
I just
point out another one. Point out another one. Go ahead.
Look, man, I just got to stick it to you. You bash on my boy Buerhle. He's got double the support of Torrey Hunter. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying
it should be the opposite.
But Andrew Jones, okay, I am not a Braves homer. I would not vote for Dale Murphy on the contemporary era ballot committee in terms of the Hall of Famer. So that tells you right there I'm not a Braves homer. However, I believe Andrew Jones should be in the Hall of Fame. He's got over 400 home runs. He's got 10 gold gloves. There is only 3 players in the history of the game that are in that club right there. It's Willie Mays, Ken Griffey Jr., and Andrew Jones. What?
There is one infielder that.
There's one infielder. Sorry. Tell me who it is, Tom.
Jack Schmidt.
Yes, Michael Jack Schmidt. But in terms of outfielders, those are the only 3. That's it. Okay. Then, talking a little bit further about his defensive clout. Not only was he the walking human highlight reel, like Dominique Wilkins in Atlanta, he was the baseball version of that. He won 10 straight gold gloves. And on this program, Dom likes to wax poetic about 5 gold gloves. That's half a decade. 5 gold gloves. That should matter. Jones did it for a whole decade. 10 straight. Not different points in his career. A literal whole decade. No one else won the National League Gold Glove in center field. And he had a D-WAR for his career of 24.4. That is number 1 all time amongst outfielders. Number 1. Not Willie Mays, who's looked at as, the greatest all-around player because of his defensive metrics in the outfield. It's Andrew Jones. Okay. Not saying all around he's better than Willie Mays. I'm saying defensively, he's the greatest defensive outfielder of all time by the numbers. Put Andrew Jones in the Hall of Fame. I'll let you speak your piece, and then I'll talk some ballot math in terms of Andrew.
No, absolutely. And I didn't mean to put Andrew Jones down to lift Torrey Hunter up. I was just trying to put them on a little bit more of an even playing field because I don't think the difference between them is as stark as these percentages show. I am a Andrew Jones voter. Andrew Jones is on my ballot. I have his auto, and I also have the Bowman's Best Rookie. I am a pro Andrew Jones guy. I have been his entire time on the ballot. And it starts with the 410 gold gloves. I think that alone makes you Hall of Fame worthy. His WAR, because of his defensive prowess, is over 60, which is a number that does matter. And you can also lose WAR. And in his 30s, when he was very bad, he wasn't gaining a lot of WAR. But what I really want to highlight with Andrew Jones is everyone talks about that decade of gold gloves. But before he fell off in his 30s with LA and Texas and Chicago, his 2005 season hit 51 home runs, led the National League, drove in 128 RBIs. And then his 2006 season at age 29, 41 home runs and 129 RBIs. Neither one of those led the league that year. To me, those 2 years is what really made Andrew Jones a Hall of Famer. Those 2 years at the end of his peak that were arguably the 2 best offensive seasons of his career were so good that it helped the total numbers despite his fall off in his 30s, still be above the Hall of Fame line. He has 1,204 runs scored, 1,289 RBIs, 383 doubles, 1,933 hits. I think that's the biggest reason he hasn't gotten more support from the writers is not having the rule of 2,000 and a career batting average of 254, which would be one of the lowest elected in a long time. I think those two numbers, which are mainly affected by how he aged in his 30s, not that he was a batting average guy to begin with, but he became less of one. Those two things have kept him out for some time. We've talked about the Rule 2000 on this program before and how the baseball writers since the expansion in 1969 have not elected anyone with less than 2,000 career hits. We talked a little bit earlier, teased about Chase Utley and how well he's doing. He's under 2,000. Andrew Jones has climbed over the years under 2,000. I think that rule will be broken. And I hope it's Andrew Jones that is the one that does it, because he is over the line in some of the other ways to become a Hall of Famer.
And in terms of his candidacy and ballot math here for him, he finished at 66.2% last year. Once the private component came out, he dropped 6% off of what he was trending at public ballots. As of right now, he's at 83.2%. Again, if all things held true, that means he would fall to 77% and be elected. Now, one other thing I want to highlight here. He fell 35 votes short last year. In the net plus minus so far this year amongst known ballots, he is a +7. I think he has to see that continue to compile here quickly on the public ballot for him to get in this year. Again, we only know 107 of the estimated 428 ballots that will be submitted. That's, just over that 25% mark. We'll learn a lot in the coming weeks in terms of the public ballot and have a better idea to project that. But as of right now, Dom, I really hate to say it as such a strong Andrew Jones supporter. I feel like he's going to fall just short this year. I think he's going to wind up, around that 70-ish% mark. I believe the metric you used off air was somewhere between 68 and 72%. And he's in his 9th year of the ballot. Mm-hmm. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope we're celebrating at least a 2-man class here from the writers with Beltran and Jones. But I think he just misses and goes into his 10th and final year of eligibility on this ballot. And I think that final year push will get him over and he'll be a Hall of Famer next year.
Yeah, as soon as I saw, because I believe he went from only like 62 or 63% to 66. So he didn't take a huge jump last year like I was hoping he would. Mm-hmm. I don't think he's going to necessarily make an almost 10% jump this year. I think it's going to be marginal. The 10-year push has been a real thing with the Hall of Fame the last handful of years. I think, between Billy Wagner and Tim Raines and Edgar Martinez, like all these guys that have gotten the last year push, I think Andrew Jones is going to fall into that category. Even though I talked about with Torrey Hunter, I don't think you can objectively check off 10 names that are better than Torrey Hunter. I don't think you can objectively not check off more than if you're excluding condemned steroid users. I don't think you can check off more than 3 names without saying Andrew Jones is not better than these guys. So even if you're a small hall guy or someone that doesn't use all 10 votes or doesn't even come close to that average of 6.5, I don't know how Andrew Jones isn't one of your guys. The ballot is weaker, and if we're throwing 2,000 hits out the window, if we're looking at totals in other categories, like Andrew Jones is ahead of almost all these guys, not named Carlos Beltran, and then Alex Rodriguez and Manny Ramirez, obviously with the steroids. But it's really crazy that it's taken Andrew Jones this long, and it's even crazier. I thought that with the ballot opening up, that he would be where Beltran is right now. And he's not yet. So we will see. I do think year 10 will be the year for Andrew Jones. We're going to run through these first year guys a little quickly. Matt Kemp should have an MVP in his trophy case. He was robbed, but he did date Rihanna. 21.6 career WAR, 1,808 career hits, like we said, falling short of the rule of 2000, 287 career home runs. In 2011, he led the league with 8 WAR, 115 runs, 39 home runs, and 126 RBIs, as well as a 172 OPS plus and 353 total bases, and finished second in MVP voting, which was to Ryan Braun, who we talked about earlier on this ballot. So they share the ballot together. They did not share that MVP. When it comes to Howie Kendrick, he was a instrumental part, again, of that 2019 Washington National World Series run. He had a surprising WAR total of 35. I didn't think it was going to be that high, 1,747 career hits. He was the NLCS MVP during that run, a one-time All-Star, and throughout his career, did not lead the league in any major statistics. Nick Markakis, shout out Will Steff, is the only first-year candidate on the ballot this year with over 2,000 career hits, 2,388. If you're a real Hall of Fame nerd, you remember there were some people prospecting him as a 3,000 hit guy back in the day. 33.7 career WAR, a 3-time Gold Glover, 288 career batting average. He scored 1,119 runs, drove in 1,046, but only hit 189 home runs. 514 doubles, though. So he had some pop, just not home run power. Very, very solid player, 109 OPS plus. Led the league in WAR in 2008, which was a season where he did not receive any MVP votes. It was before the analytics took over the league. I think he would have been a top 10 MVP vote getter if it was a different era. And then finally, Daniel Murphy, another guy, 2019. But he was the NLCS MVP for the Mets, Silver Slugger, 3-time All-Star. Really good hitting second baseman. He led the league in doubles back-to-back years with the Nationals in 16 and 17, and led the league in slugging percentage and OPS in 2016, which got him MVP runner-up in 2016 to Chris Bryant. He did not deserve to win that MVP, but a very, very good season. He was a very, very good hitting middle infielder who transitioned to a first base DH type at the end. Jake, any memories you have of Kemp, Kendrick, Markakis, or Murphy?
I just want to say, in case our good friend Will is still listening, I agree with Dom. Nick Markakis was a great Brave. I loved watching him in Atlanta.
Yeah, that's all I said about him, actually. Dustin Pedroia is trending all right. He got 11.9% of the vote last year. I told you on this program that I knew he was going to get over the 5%. Like, I was very confident that he would, based on how Chase Utley was doing. Even though I don't think either one of them is a Hall of Famer, I thought, Dustin Pedroia has the hardware that Utley does not. And Pedroia's career got ended a little prematurely due to a similar play that Chase Utley is known for, which is sliding really hard with your leg up into second base. Hashtag Manny Machado. We have forgiven you. Not really. But Dustin Pedroia won the Rookie of the Year, 2007, autographed rookie card. Was an MVP in 2008. He didn't necessarily deserve that MVP in hindsight, but was a amazing defender at second base, was someone that you want your kids to play baseball like. Just someone that played the game the right way, hustle, loyalty, respect, wasn't afraid to get his jersey dirty, played hard, never took a pitch off, never took a base running opportunity off. High IQ player. He's going to coach in the big leagues when his kids grow up someday. He wants to spend time with his kids now, and I respect that. Dustin Pedroia, I think, kind of like we said, the 30s make a Hall of Famer. He didn't get to have the 30s of compiling to become a Hall of Famer, which is a real shame. I don't vote for him, but if he ever ends up getting enough consideration by the writers or by an era committee, I will surely go to Cooperstown to honor one of my favorite players from my childhood, Dustin Pedroia.
He was a fun player to watch. He was truly a dog. I think his candidacy is for better or worse, riding the coattails of what happens with Chase Utley. It's his second year of candidacy. He's gained a net positive of 11 votes already this year. We'll see what his second year bump gets him and where he lands. He was at 11.9% last year. I think if he does wind up in this 20 to 25 range, that's a good sign for him, at least for his long-term potential outlook. The next person up, one of the funniest guys to watch in the batter's box was Hunter Pence, man. He was all over the place, herky-jerky, but somehow he would hit a baseball. He was fun in his time in San Fran. He was fun even in his time in Philly as a Braves fan. Always enjoyed watching him play, but he's going to fall off the ballot. He's not going to get 5%.
No, put it over the fence. Pence had 30.9 career WAR, 1,791 hits, 244 RBI. So falling short of even my metrics. But he was a key contributor for the San Francisco Giants, winning 2 World Series championships in 2012 and 14. He led the league in at-bats in 2014 and led the league with hit by pitches in 2009. So fun player, played hard. And I remember him fighting with the little hill in Minute Maid back in the day quite a few times, trying to make plays. So Hunter Pence, really good player, an interesting candidate on this year's ballot. Andy Pettitte has been making some steam, and while Andy Pettitte is hashtag on my board, because while he admitted to using HGH, he never got suspended by Major League Baseball 2005 post. To me, he's still short. He is granted closer than Cole Hamels and Mark Buerhle, just in terms of like an accumulator, but still short of what I would say is a Hall of Fame pitcher, especially when you factor in that he did have some help during his career, having that in the back of your mind. 60.2 WAR, 256 wins. Those numbers got him a lot of comparisons to CC Sabathia on the ballot last year, and he saw a decent jump last year. Jake, what do you think of the momentum for Andy Pettitte recently? Like, is this just smoke, or is there potentially fire for him to build a Hall of Fame election out of this?
One of the possibilities is that we could have just happened to see the voters that voted for Pettitte already submit their public ballot. You and I talked about that before the show, that, often if you're pro any narrative that seems controversial at all, of I'm pro steroids, or I'm, pro a Kurt Schilling, or pro this, war darling, whatever. If you're pro something that needs a narrative to help to continue to push their candidacy, you tend to vote early. Now, if that aside, Pettitte has, we know, hard data, he has gained a net positive of 14 votes, plus 15, only minus 1 so far in the returning voters, which is just generally kind of surprising to me a little bit here. 8th year of candidacy, 27.9% was his results last year. He did only drop off 4.2% after the the private results to be added to the public. Again, like we were talking about some of these other guys, if all things held true, variables unknown and what have you, that would make him fall in the potentially 50% range if he continued to see this trend. I don't think that is likely. I think he'll still finish lower than that. But seeing a late push for him, I think is more interesting to me going into years from now on the contemporary era ballot than the writer's ballot. But it is interesting in terms of the Hall of Fame as a whole.
Yeah, to me, Andy Pettitte, to see potential gains like this just makes what happened with the other non-convicted steroid guys on the same ballot years ago. It reopens that wound for me. But it's interesting to see what it'll end up meaning for Pettitte. He was a great postseason performer, and a guy who, like I said, if you're just looking at the cumulative case, you can argue is the best pitcher on this ballot. So it's kind of wide open, whether you like the peak of Felix or the bulk of Pettit, but I think both those guys are competing for that spot in these writers' minds, and we'll see how those four pitchers fall in terms of how far each one is from each other percentage wise. Rick Porcello made the Hall of Fame ballot.
He made the ballot.
Rick Porcello won the Cy Young in 2016 because he led the league with 22 wins. As a Red Sox fan, Rick Porcello was really steady in 2016, and I appreciated watching him pitch. In 2017, he led the league in losses, hits given up, home runs given up, and batters faced. 18.8 career WAR, a 4.40 career ERA. I was a little surprised he made the ballot, but it is an honor nonetheless. It is cool that people are talking about Rick Porcello again a few years later. But sometimes guys will get one vote, like we've seen Edwin Encarnacion and Sin-Shu Chu get a vote. I'm not expecting anybody to check the box for Rick Porcello, unfortunately. Probably the most surprising name on this list. I think without that Cy Young in his trophy case, he probably doesn't make it here. But he has a Cy Young, and the rest of us don't. So that's something that is important for sure.
The next two candidates here,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to combine. I don't think we want this to be a 2-hour-long episode when we talked about it being a weak ballot, and then we still spend 2 hours talking about it. What can we say? We love the Hall of Fame. But I am going to combine them because I feel like we've alluded to them a lot, kind of beat this topic to death. But they're Manny Ramirez and Alex Rodriguez. Manny's in his final year of candidacy. He ain't getting in. He finished at 34% last year. He's a net plus of +4. He is getting a little bit of support in his final year. He's not going to get over the hump. Alex Rodriguez in his 5th year of candidacy, he finished at 37% last year. He is a net positive of +6. He's trending at 51.3% now. I don't think he's getting in, especially in light of the contemporary era results going forward here in the second half of his candidacy. I would be pretty shocked if he got in at the tail end, and it would send the Hall of Fame world into an uproar if A-Rod got elected in his final year or something of his writer's candidacy.
So we all know that he took the job with Fox in order to repair his image and help him with the Hall of Fame.
No doubt.
We are also aware that as the years go on, the ballot is thinning out of steroid guys and of less impressive hitters, as we've talked about. I would not be surprised if the new age voters end up using Alex Rodriguez as the Trojan horse.
Oh, man.
In order to reopen the floodgates and the possibilities for guys that are getting blackballed by the era committees right now. Because if Alex Rodriguez gets a plaque being convicted multiple times of steroids, I don't care how much he's repaired his image, you can't say the guys that were never convicted of steroids are more guilty and less deserving. So him trending at 51%, I know it's early and the steroid voters usually come out early, but he has 5 years left to go. With Manny Ramirez falling off, there are probably some people that vote for Manny and don't vote for A-Rod. Not a lot, but probably a few that'll come over. Could A-Rod be the Trojan horse to try to right the wrongs? I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily support that, but especially as we keep going with guys hitting the ballot with less than 2,000 hits, Alex Rodriguez has over 3,000. With these guys that are getting support that have around 200-300 career home runs, Alex Rodriguez has 696. Like there's a world where the ballot thins out so much and he's like the one steroid guy left and he just gets lifted. I don't think that's the world we're living in, but it's something that I've thought about recently with Manny Ramirez being in his final year on the ballot and there not being really anyone else that fits his description coming up in terms of like a guy that would be a Hall of Famer without the steroid cloud. And I'm interested to see what gains he makes this year to set him up for the second half of his, time on the ballot.
That right there, my friend, is a cracking Cooperstown patented conspiracy theory. Not saying I want it, but I love it. Not saying I want it, but I love it. Next up on the ballot here is another Rodriguez. Recently, in several of our most recent episodes, we've talked a lot about the future of the relief pitcher. And K-Rod, Francisco Rodriguez, in his fourth year of eligibility, last year, he finished at 10% of the ballot. He currently is trending at 15%. I read the next one. 15% of the current known ballot. He is a net plus minus of +5 votes. He has lost none. I don't know if he will gain enough momentum over the next half decade to warrant him getting in. But like we talked about before, Billy Wagner being in now kind of paves the way for some of these other potential relievers in the current game, like Craig Kimbrell and Kenley Jansen, and a guy like K-Rod, who's out of the game, but he kind of falls in this range of what could make a new relief pitcher. Mm-hmm. Is K-Rod one of the guys you would vote for, Dom?
K-Rod is the fifth and final name on my ballot. So if I had a ballot, I'd be voting for Bobby Abreu, Carlos Beltran, Andrew Jones, Torrey Hunter, and Francisco Rodriguez. And I've came around on him too, and it's because of the election of Billy Wagner. The Hall of Fame is telling me that you don't have to reach 500 saves like Mariano Rivera and Trevor Hoffman to be a Hall of Fame reliever. There are 9 relievers in the history of the game that have over 400 career saves. Francisco Rodriguez and Billy Wagner are on that list. There are 14 relief pitchers in the history of Major League Baseball that have over 1,000 strikeouts. Billy Wagner and Francisco Rodriguez are on that list. So I agree with you. I don't know if Francisco Rodriguez is necessarily going to climb from 10% all the way to 75, even though the history with Billy Wagner says that he should. However, I think Francisco Rodriguez is now a hashtag future Hall of Famer because of the election of Billy Wagner, because we have a strong feeling of how they're going to look at Kenley Jansen and Craig Kimbrell and Aroldis Chapman down the road. So even if Francisco Rodriguez in the next 6 years is not able to build the 75%, Billy Wagner's election, along with support for that next wave of guys, he becomes a prime era committee guy if he does not get in through the right ear. So I am prospecting Francisco Rodriguez now as a future Hall of Fame relief pitcher. Before, it was kind of 500 saves or bust. Now, if you can get that combo of 400 saves and 1,000 strikeouts, I think that's the recipe. Because 500 saves really wasn't a thing before Mariano Rivera and Trevor Hoffman came around.
I think if we end up being right on Kimbrell, Jansen, especially if we also end up being right on Chapman, because of course we're going to be right. If we are, K-Rod becomes the forgotten relief pitcher, and then he gets in on the contemporary era ballot. I agree with you there. I would not vote for him here. I want to see that happen for me. If that happens with Kimbrell and Jansen and a Chapman, I think that then I'm the guy that then comes around on K-Rod. And if I was put in that room, then I check the box.
If it happens for K-Rod first, that's just better for Jansen, Kimbrell.
I think they become slam dunks, in my opinion, once they're said and done, if K-Rod gets in first.
Yeah, and K-Rod has the single season save record still with 62 and 02.
Doesn't matter.
Along with that amazing playoff run on the way to the World Series. So, he's not just someone that hits those round numbers we're looking for. He was an elite reliever in his time.
Next up, we've got Jimmy Rollins, who is famous for also being a Philadelphia Philly. Last year, he finished at 18%. That was his fourth year. This is his fifth. He's currently trending at 29.2% of known ballots. He only dropped 2% down from public to private. And so far this year, he is a net plus minus of +7. Now, he's at the midway point, Dom. And if he lands somewhere in the 25-ish% range, I don't think that he winds up as a Hall of Famer from the Writers Committee. Like at the halfway mark to be at 25%, I don't think you're going to get there. Barring a drastic change in perception of what makes a Hall of Fame player at said position. And even at shortstop isn't the deepest of positions in terms of the Hall of Fame. I just don't see Jimmy Rollins getting in this route. Do you?
Jimmy Rollins, until I made my own metrics for the Hall of Fame, was a guy that I was very much behind. He is now a near miss for me. I think Jimmy Rollins hanging around on the ballot is a sign of the weakness of the future Hall of Fame hitters. Because we talked about how all these guys don't have 2,000 career hits. Jimmy Rollins has 2,455. Jimmy Rollins has an MVP in his trophy case, whether he deserved it or not. He had that amazing month. Jimmy Rollins, 3-time All-Star, World Series champion. He played the majority of his career with one franchise. He's not a one franchise player, but he's pretty damn close. Jimmy Rollins led the league in plate appearances and at-bats multiple times. He led the league in runs once. He led the league in triples 4 times in the modern era, including having a 20 triple season in his MVP 2007 season. Led the league in stolen bases once. Has 470 career stolen bases to go along with a 95 OPS plus. So he had seasons above at league average, but he also had a bunch of seasons below league average. Ended up being 5% below the league average hitter. A 264 career batting average doesn't really excite people either. He's a good player. But, the 4 Gold Gloves, Silver Slugger, he's someone that's good enough to stay on this ballot because of how weak it is, but I don't know if he has momentum in either direction, either through the writers or through the era committee, because I don't think the whole case is strong enough.
I agree. He was fun to play with on Backyard Baseball 2001, but I don't think he's going to be a Hall of Famer. We've got 3 names remaining. The next one up is a fellow Philadelphia Philly and teammate of Jimmy Rollins. And it is the not so appreciated here on Cracking Cooperstown, Chase Utley. He's at 39.8% last year. That was his second year on the ballot. Currently, he is trending at 65.5% of the known public ballot. He is a net plus minus of, I believe that is 11. Is that 11? He has gained 14 votes but lost 3. So he is seeing a little bit of a bump up again this year. He did have a pretty drastic, though, difference between the public and the private. Of the returning candidates, it is the most drastic difference. From the public to the private, he actually dropped 11%, 11.8, almost 12, when many others were low single digits. So drastic difference there. But even if that held true at the current trend, that means Chase Utley's going to jump up to the 50 to 55% range potentially for this year's results.
He's jumping 10% minimum. That's the streak he's on.
And while second base is an underrepresented position in the Hall, we gave Jeff Kent his flowers at the beginning of the episode. There is one new Hall of Fame second baseman. Neither of us are supporters of Chase Utley. This continues to kind of be a little bit baffling, but he's looks like he's going to be a Hall of Famer, Tom. Like, I hate to say it, but he keeps taking these 10% jumps and he's going to get there.
No, I agree. And the wide openness of the ballot is allowing for this, I think,
opportunity for him. It really is.
But it's really the sabermetric crowd, the new age baseball crowd is kind of crowning him as their king. His 64.6 career WAR is very high for a second baseman. He was a very good player. He reaches my qualifiers for runs scored and RBIs. He has over the nice round 1,000 on them. He falls short of the Rule 2000, 1885. He falls short of 300 career home runs, 259. Had power for a second baseman. Good hitter. His OPS plus is 117, which is good, but it's not one of the 10 best OPS pluses on this ballot. Like I said, the character clause I think gets misused a lot. Chase Utley was known as a hard nose and to some people dirty player. He slid it into second base hard. He got in people's faces. All that stuff seems to be forgiven and not acted like it's part of his resume. For a guy who statistically is borderline. I understand the peak value, but usually the peak value is accompanied by MVPs. It's accompanied by everything else. And in his peak, I understand he had 5 straight All-Star appearances and 4 straight Silver Sluggers and got MVP votes each year, but he wasn't even an MVP finalist. And partially that's because of the way voting happened back then, not appreciating the war. But I don't think he deserved any of those MVPs either, as like the obvious guy who got snubbed. So it's like, yes, he was a great player at a position that doesn't have a ton of offensive value for that period of time. But to me, the 30s, if he in his mid to late 30s, once he like was at the end with Philadelphia and had a couple years with the Dodgers, if in those years he was still a everyday player and broke the rule of 2000 and hit closer to 300 home runs, I'd be a yes. He's not a complete miss, but for someone to get this level of support and these kind of jumps, it's usually someone with a much more obvious, well-rounded case. And this is so purely sabermetric. So Chase Utley's going to be a Hall of Famer. Get your autographs, get your rookie cards. It's coming. It won't be this year, but it's why Cole Hamels doesn't shock me. It's why I said a 10% minimum jump for Chase Utley. Like it's just what I expect at this point. And it's crazy because Chase Utley might have fallen off the ballot 10 years ago when there was all these other guys clubbing it. Definitely guys like Pedroia and David Wright, who we're going to get to, would have as short peak guys. So I used to be amazed, and now it's just reality.
Hashtag sabermetric Trojan horse. Moving on to Omar Vizquel, who's in his 9th of 10 ballots. He finished last year at 17.8%. He's currently trending at 11.5%. Apparently, the Vizquel voters don't get out early. He is +1 in the net plus minus. He hasn't lost any votes, but he's only gained 1. Vizquel, I would actually vote for him. He's got over 2,500 hits. He's got all the gold gloves, over double digits. I'd vote for him. However, I think the reason behind why he's not going to be a Hall of Famer is exactly what you said pre-show, Dom.
Yeah. I think that the character clause is incorrectly used often. I think the character clause has been used properly for Omar Vizquel because while he is above my Hall of Fame line as well, numbers wise, he is not a slam dunk guy. And to have the different legal problems that he has had and things over the years, I think that's why he went from someone who was getting like close to 40% of the vote to someone who's getting like half that now. It's why the Vizquel voters aren't getting out early. They don't want to publicly be supporting this man. And I'm okay if he ends up being one of those guys that is an era committee selection XYZ, because there's more deserving players and people on both ballots right now.
And proof of that, showing that they don't want to publicly vote for Vizquel, there are only 3 returning players that were a positive change from the public known ballot to the private in terms of their percentage going up. And the other 2 were Torrey Hunter, who went up 2.4% from the private, and K-Rod, 2.5% up. Vizquel was up 5.6% from the private voters, which is significant. in terms of the overall voting electorate. I think the ones that are still voting for Vizquel are basically the ones that are like baseball on the field only matters, and then coupled with diehard compilation supporters. Those are the ones who would vote for Vizquel.
Yeah. I mean, the hit total is a big part of his case. The Gold Gloves, he was a very good player. David Wright rounds things out. Shout out Big Scott and all the Mets fans out there. The David Wright, like I said, I think if it was 10 years ago, David Wright wouldn't have made the ballot a second and now a third time. I think he would have fallen off. But David Wright, same thing as Dustin Pedroia. I think in his 20s, you were seeing the beginning of a Hall of Fame career. But what makes you a Hall of Famer is your 30s. And from age 32 on, he essentially was not a baseball player. It was nice that he got those moments in the 2016 World Series with the Mets after missing most of the season. He had some really high peak seasons, 6, 7, and even an 8.3 WAR season in 2007. Two-time Gold Glove, two-time Silver Slugger, was a 7-time All-Star, 49.1 career WAR, 1,777 hits, 242 home runs, a 296 hitter. Just didn't have enough runway. That's all it is. And I understand the people that are voting for him, like they're saying the peak was enough. And to be fair, accomplishing 50 WAR by age 31 is impressive. You know, that's someone who would be very high on our 40 active Hall of Fame prospecting list. But the job not finished, as Kobe Bryant used to say. It's kind of how I look at it with David Wright and with Dustin Pedroia, who has more hardware and more rings than David Wright. They're kind of the same kind of candidate. High batting average, good defenders, power, short of Rule 2000. It's more sad than anything. So the people that throw David Wright a vote, I don't ding them too hard, especially on a wide open ballot like this. But if you're voting for David Wright and Dustin Pedroia over like Torrey Hunter, that's where I have the problem. Is Torrey Hunter did finish the job, and although the WAR total is the same, you can use that in the qualitative argument for Pedroia and Wright. I'd rather have someone who put up the round numbers with that WAR total as opposed to the higher peak, but wasn't able to hit any of the round numbers.
David Wright is going to fill out the rest of his 10-year candidacy on this ballot. He's +8 votes this year, hasn't lost any, but he's never going to gain any real traction with the writers to get into the Hall of Fame. I don't think I could have said it better than you did right there. Now, we've kept it under 2 hours in this episode on Cracking Cooperstown. And if you're still with us, we may mix this in at different points throughout episodes in this coming year. But I'm going to do it for the first time here late in the show to see if anybody is still with us. So shout out to our not sponsor of Cracking Cooperstown, of Brewer's Blades, which is my brother's knife business. So if you are still here and you would like Brewer's Blades to be a sponsor of this show, really just to let us know that you're still watching, comment somewhere in your comment, either about knives, about Brewer's Blades, cutting through this show, something like that, to let us know that you love the Hall of Fame as much as Dom and I do, and you watch this whole episode. Anything you would like to close us with, Dom?
No, I'm looking forward to the Hall of Fame announcement. We will be finding out about that in just about a week or so. And of this dropping, and I'm just really excited because, like I said, I think Carlos Beltran will get in as the prediction, but I'm very interested to see the gains of everybody else. I think that's really what this year's ballot is about, is to see, with it being this open, who do the masses flock towards, in different ways. So we will be finding out about the Hall of Fame announcement. I believe it's the 12th.
Sounds right. So to close this out here, subscribe to Staven Sports Cards and subscribe to Solo Shot Sports. Keep collecting, and God bless.